The first thing that you want to do when you cut an S-seam is do long waves, okay? Where the bumps go on top, the top of the wave, keep those all the same distance, okay? Keep them all the same height so it's easier to fix. When you have those cuts, you want to lay your second piece over the top of the first piece that you cut. On this piece, you really want to make sure that you nail it on the back side, because the piece that you're going to be matching the cut to, see the piece that we have folded over, you need to make sure that it doesn't move. Don't go crazy and get after it and try to do it in 2 seconds, but make sure that the piece can relax in the sun and that you're taking your time and it's all stretched out. Then, as you saw, we matched up the backing with the top of the cuts. Now we took a long knife, box knife, make sure it's sharp, and don't be afraid to change these knives, the blades, every 30 feet of cutting, every 30 linear feet. I don't care, you're only going to make the seam once in your lifetime on this job. Throw the blade away and get you a new one. Keep your blades sharp, you're going to butcher this thing. Alright? You got to get used to it taking a long time. You have to follow that same pattern, cutting it from the back side, and go as slow as you can. Notice where all the cuts are on the back side, and then cut the second piece to match the pattern. Keep in mind, you only have to do it once. Now, as the waves change in height, okay, you want to make sure that you're pushing that backing up against the wave, up against the top of the S or the bottom of the S or wherever you are on your cut. And make sure that you cut it very carefully, and make sure that you're cutting it to the same exact pattern. Now, you don't have to worry about it moving because, of course, like I told you, you've already nailed it. If you can do this successfully, as you can see in the picture, the waves don't move. Now, you might see it a little bit right now, but don't worry, you haven't brushed it, you haven't put sand in it. As I'm kicking it with my foot right here, you can see that the line is already disappearing, and you can hardly see it at all. And this is even before you nail it. So in this section, as you can see or not see, this is really up close, there is a seam here. Joey, how many times you done S-seam before?
Never.
Never. Is it pretty easy or it's complicated?
Pretty easy.
So what's the trick to it, dude?
Well, you cut your S on one side.
Okay.
And then you don't want to cut big pieces. You want these small ones and match it up with your other S.
On the back, and
And
cut it
then
underneath.
cut it underneath. Try to match it.
How many times you did this before?
Never.
It's your first day? Who are you hanging around with, man? Oh my god.
I always excavated and never cut. With the nails, I was afraid to cut.
That's a killer looking line.
I didn't want to fucking
It's crazy, you can't see it, huh?
mess it up. Yeah, it's fucking nuts.
That's so cool. So as Joey's joking around over there, he's doing some seriously good cuts. So what he likes to do is you put your knife exactly where the backing meets the other side of the turf after you bended it over, and you cut it up in little strips. So that way you're not doing a big long cut and you don't screw it up. I had him on a certain kind of duty to where he couldn't fail. So he cut it in long strips by bending the backing over, matching it to where it meets the other side of the turf, and drawing a line straight up with the knife. He cut it up so that he's only cutting off little tiny pieces of it. So if he made an inaccurate cut, which most of the time you could just nail it or carpet kick it in, and you know, you could fix those little tiny miscuts anyway with some tricky nailing. But if he did make a miscut, it's only a small section. He didn't get to go all crazy because he only did a little piece at a time. Oh, and Antonio the master, sir. So it's true, you can't see this turf at all. That was a really, I don't want to talk bad about it, but that was a cheaper, price-wise turf, okay? And it's a short turf. You see, it's not that tall. Okay, now when you're feeling the second piece that you're trying to match to the first cut, if you feel a little bump, then that means the polyurethane is touching somewhere on the bottom. And what we suggest to the first time people is getting either some Home Depot scissors or something like that. And if you feel two pieces touching, you rub your hand left and right and you feel like a little bump, or it's thicker than the other pieces where it's laying down flat, get under there and snip it and fix that up. If you do it and both sides are laying down flat and you don't feel like any kind of little bumps where the two pieces are touching each other, you're going to have a beautiful seam. I don't want to tell you this, both of these guys, first day doing S-seams, but it is. Chew dog in the house, baby. What's up, boy? Yeah. Now coming down to here, this is the long one, so there's two of us cutting on it. But you can see the pattern here. All right. But when you lay the piece over the second piece, you see, when you brush it, I'm literally filming it like right up close. Look at that. You can't see it at all. Yeah, up there. All right. Coming up here. We didn't even nail it yet. You can't see it. So here, you got it popping up. That's because we ain't tucked it and fixed it yet. But you're starting to get the idea. You just fold it over from the back side, cut it, and press it in. Check this out. To be continued. So here's the thing with a piece like this. Now, it's skinny. You want to put an S. Pieces of turf are 15 feet wide, right? So how do you fit a 15-foot wide piece into a little skinny gap like that? So you measure it long ways. Okay, let's say the piece is, for simple math, 30 feet long and 2.5 feet wide, or whatever have you. Now, if it's 30 feet long, what you need to do is you need to get a 15-foot wide piece of turf and cut it into thirds and stack them on top of each other. Now you exercise this cut. We can already see the squiggly line, the S cut on the left side, so you're going to match that like I just showed you in the video. However, when you're stacking the pieces on top of each other, you want to make sure that you get a little extra material, and I'll tell you how to measure it, so that you can do an S where the pieces lay flat on top of each other. Kind of like if you put 3 playing cards on top of each other and you fit them into that gap. Now the piece of turf would be, in this circumstance, like one big piece of cardboard, and you cut it into 3 little playing cards and you stack them on top of each other. You do S's on the left and S's where they stack on top of each other. So in the scenario where I say a piece is 30 feet long and 2.5 feet wide, the piece of turf is 15 feet wide, so you do 1/3 the length. Now you need a little bit of room to make the S's where you're stacking them, so on a 31-foot piece, alright, 2.5 feet wide, you want to get an 11-foot long piece of turf, cut it into thirds, and stack them on top of each other, and you can fill that gap without wasting, 13 feet of material.